may have lost his way, may have miscalculated, plunging the world into another crisis. Trump today might sound cavalier, but as long as the war rages on without end, Trump will be nagged by one definitive question. Has Trump trivialized a strategic misstep on Iran? Fundamental questions, viewers, tonight. Let's go and ask some of them. We're joined by David Goldwyn, president of Goldwyn Global Strategies. Let me weave you into this conversation. We also have Erol Morkoc, Republican strategist, Greg Swenson, Republican strategist, Sushant Sareen, Senior Fellow of the ORF, and Dr. Ranganathan.
Thank you.
I want to begin with you, Mr. Goldwyn. Where do you stand on the questions that are being posed today of Trump? He says, of course, that you've got to be foolish to think that, there's not going to be any pain and so on and so forth. It's a small price to pay. And those who disagree with me are being very foolish. How do you react to that?
Well, there's been no question there's been bipartisan opposition to the Iranian regime, its missile program, its nuclear program, and the havoc that it wreaks in the region. But, the president failed to consult Congress, even to consult Congress and explain his strategy before he launched this attack on Iran in concert with Israel. I think the Israeli public knew a lot more about where its government was heading than ours did. And the problem is the president has still not made his war aims clear. He still hasn't made his strategy clear, and it's not clear where the end game is. So I think from that point of view, he is the first president, I think, in probably 4 decades to go to war without any public support or consultation. It's not going to serve him well politically. But really, the reality now, how this all turns out, depends on how long this lasts. If this lasts for a while and we have global recession and economic problems, then the president's poor poll ratings, which were already in the 30s, will be worse, and they may stand to lose both houses of Congress in the midterm elections. The Senate would be a bit of a reach. But it also depends on what happens with Iran. If there was a regime change, that would be fine. But the history is that the U.S. success in replacing regimes has been incredibly poor, and Iran's ability to respond asymmetrically through terror and other means is quite high. And so the odds of our getting a democratic regime in Iran are slim. So what are we going to get? And I think that's really what the American people are still waiting to hear. Is it just elimination of the nuclear program and the missile program? Is it really regime change? This business of unconditional surrender is provocative. Will the president take an off-ramp, which, he seemed to pass on this weekend when the Iranian president apologized to his neighbors? We could have used that as a way to de-escalate the crisis, but the president doubled down again. So I think this is what Americans, maybe of all stripes, are unhappy with, is where are we going? What's the strategy? What does success look like? And how long will this pain endure while the president seems to be making up the strategy as he goes along in the absence of professional advice, even from those he has appointed to office?
So let me bring in Greg Swenson. The one thing that uncertainty does, Mr. Swenson, is that it deflates sentiment. And the one tracker of sentiment is the marketplace. Markets are jittery. Just follow the money and you'll get your answer. You might have a quibble with the MAGA base, you might have a quibble with the wisdom of the people, so to speak. But the money never lies. And the money is saying that Trump's got it wrong.
Well, I think that would be a hasty conclusion at this point in the conflict. Yes, markets don't like uncertainty, and I think you're seeing that now. But I think much of this will be short term. The spike in oil prices and natural gas prices is temporary. You've got literally no movement, as you showed on the map earlier. You've got no movement of ships right now through the Strait of Hormuz, but that will be temporary. We've eliminated 43 Iranian naval warships. We've got the USDFC has backstopped all of the insurance on tankers in the region, and you'll probably see U.S. destroyers even escorting tankers through. So I think this blip in energy prices is very temporary. And remember, the U.S. is the biggest producer of energy globally, 13.6 million barrels a day. So this is not like the old times of conflict in the Middle East where you saw massive spikes. Like during the Arab Spring, gasoline in the U.S. was up to $3.50 a gallon. Right now, it's at $3.41. Yes, that's up, 25%. But It's only 298 in Texas. It's much higher in really restrictive places like California that have embraced this sort of climate lunacy. And so, but between the supply coming from the U.S., which is unaffected by the conflict, and of course the temporary nature of shutting down the Strait of Hormuz, I think markets will recover quite quickly. But I would agree, if this thing goes on forever, then probably not. But I think with the way the asymmetric nature.
What makes you feel so confident when half the world isn't confident, my dear friend?
Yeah, look, I think, consumer sentiment might be down in the US, but consumer spending is really robust. So I think when people are told repeatedly on the media that everything is bad, they start to, they start to sour on their sentiment. NBC came out yesterday with a poll that's got Trump at 44. That's well above where, Obama and W were in their second terms, and obviously higher than where Biden was in his first and only term. So, sentiment can change quickly. And I think if this war ends quickly, which, we are winning this thing, it is much more asymmetric than.
How are you saying that you're winning this thing? The Iranians have cocked a snook at you. They've come out and said that, look, you're not going to decide who leads us.
Of course they'll say that.
We've appointed Mojtaba Khomeini, the son of Khomeini.
Yeah.
That's a deliberate rejoinder.
Yeah, they are doubling down on their fanaticism, and I'm not sure if I would take the over on him making it past a week or 10 days. But the Iranian military is being decimated, and they're firing so fewer missiles now than they were at the beginning, because we've eliminated so many of the missile launch capabilities. We've eliminated, as I said, 43 naval ships. And so I think the asymmetric nature of this war is a surprise even to people like me and Erol who follow it closely.
So they didn't expect an asymmetric response, viewers. That's how prepared the Americans went into this conflict.
That's right. I mean, moving the Lincoln and the Ford to the region, it's just shown a complete asymmetric advantage that the U.S. and Israel has over Iran right now, and I think that's why I expect this thing to be to end much faster.
Let's get Sushant Sareen. Let's get Sushant Sareen into this conversation. Mr. Sareen, it's all going to be over within a few days. Let's not get our knickers in a twist. Let's breathe easy. Don't have to bother about storing up on LNG and so on and so forth. It's all the gas is all around us. Just have to tap into it, as Greg Swenson has spread it far and wide.
I was born with my skull on the outside of my head, formed into a crown. My mother took one look at the bone.
If only wars were to end so predictably, it would be a wonderful thing. But the problem with wars is that they are by definition unpredictable. And frankly, in this particular conflict, there is no clear definition of victory. What is victory? How do you define it? From what seems to be happening right now, and which is likely to continue for some time, I suppose. Because forget about the missiles. Let's talk about the Iranian drones. Those can be launched at will from anywhere, and they do significant damage. So even if you claim some kind of victory, it's going to be a very Pyrrhic victory. And if you don't get that victory, then it's going to be a disastrous defeat for you. And if you actually win with a Pyrrhic victory, it will be a disastrous defeat probably for the Iranians, which will have its ripple effects on the region for decades to come. No, it's not going to be something that, okay, fine, let's wrap up the party and go back home and we can go back to living normal. And I'm sorry, I don't see the oil markets and the international markets, recover or bounce back in a matter of days or a matter of weeks. I suppose it'll take much, much longer, and it'll have a devastating impact, not just on the current structure of the markets and how they are operating, but I think people will now start factoring in this level of uncertainty in all future decisions. And it's actually going to be changing how countries interact with each other, how they protect each other, how trade flows. So yeah, I think it's great fun setting the world on fire without a clear agenda. And simply, somebody was earlier saying that there's some professionals he's appointed, the Americans have appointed. I don't think there are any professionals in the American system anymore. All the people who are genuine professionals, who could game certain things out, who would give advice, and you would have an administration that would take that advice, factor it in as they used to in the past. Not that it always worked in the past. Um, and then make policies, that it would be a different matter. But look, let's face it, for 20 years, Rahul, every year the American military used to tell us that they are closer to victory in Afghanistan than they were the last year. And now after 20 years, we learned that they put their tail between their legs and they ran off. So am I going to take American military analysis of how this war is going seriously? I'm sorry, I don't have anything to go by. They were promising me victory for 20 years. Every year, every general used to proclaim victory. And yet we all saw, from anybody who knew Afghanistan saw how badly the war is going, how clueless these guys were, how they did not know anything about Afghanistan, how to deal with them, what the tribal affiliations were, and who were they listening to? The British and the Pakistanis. They were their go-to guys. Who are they listening to today? I don't know, but I'm sure they're not listening to anybody who knows the place. So I don't see things working out quite well. But if it do, I would be very happy if everything was to be wrapped up in a matter of days and weeks. Nobody would be happier than me, but I don't see that happen.
Let me bring in Erol Morkoc. To define what is a victory, we need to know what is the mission. So what is the mission? Because it changes every few hours, according to DC.
Yeah, so the ever-changing mission is also a factor of fifth dimensional warfare, as we see which actors engage and which disengage. And as we start cutting off the repetitive Medusas, heads of the snakes in that situation, we'll start to form a more cogent public strategy. Now, the idea that the Americans aren't publicizing their strategies and their foreign service, Georgetown School of Foreign Service people are no longer in the equation, that's probably a good thing. When you look at the destruction of the concert of Europe, Metternich, Castlereagh, Talleyrand, historical diplomats, usually the ones who end us up in World War I's, and in large wars. You need to remove these sort of nonsensical strategists and do what needs to be done, which is what Trump and Netanyahu have decided to do. As the dust settles, you'll probably see a more coherent. Well, right now it's a total war, killing everybody in the top level of echelons, destroying 20% of the Navy, the relevant naval ships, taking out all the launchers, outproducing rockets, and keeping up that campaign of massive pressure. As Trump said yesterday, they don't want war anymore. We want war. So we're there until we finish bombing every single place we want to bomb. And then from there, I think we're going to reveal what the strategy is. But that's not for the Pentagon to tell the public as they used to do. They would publish, oh, we're going to be withdrawing in this period of time, that period of time. Donald Trump, he's the master of obfuscation. On one hand, he's tweeting about North Korea, and the next hand, he takes Maduro. So you can't read the tweets and take it at face value.
Right. So let me just ask you, what is the mission here?
The mission is very clear. It's to destroy 12er clerical Islam and Shia Islam rule in Iran, and destroy the IRG and their international capabilities for terror networks, and of course to launch rockets at their neighbors and Israel, and today we saw at NATO via Turkey.
But why do you need to do that, sir? Why do you need to do that?
It's a culmination of about 47 or 50 years of global policy in that region. And when you look at the sort of proxy we created in Israel, eventually the dominoes are on the table and the game theory dictates to go now. Because if you go down the line, oftentimes you'll see a situation manifest and perhaps grow into something you can't control. Right now, Iran did not have the capabilities to stop the United States, and it was time to go now. If they get the nuclear weapon like Kim Jong-un does, then they're much more formidable, let's say, enemy, as well as the people that they're working with in Iran and Russia.
Okay, so let's break this down. Let me ask you.
Ukraine are coming from Iran that are killing Ukrainian soldiers.
Let me ask you. So you believe that this was a strike to decapitate a leadership that sponsors terror? Right?
Correct.
Okay, one. Two, to prevent them from accessing a nuclear weapon?
More than that, but accessing or potentially using it. More than accessing it, we believe they would use it.
Right. Oh, they would use it.
Unlike Pakistan, that's not using it.
Oh, right. Now, I'll come to that. That's exactly what I'm building up to, right?
I know.
So I'm asking,
I
well,
see.
yeah, I know, because that's where your entire argument falls flat, you see. So I'm coming
Well,
up to that.
let's
So
get
here you
there.
have, hang on,
Let's get there.
viewers, they want to nail a country that exports terror. Islamist terror, that's a base for Islamist terror. Number two, so that this country doesn't get the so-called Islamic bomb, because they will use it to annihilate Israel because they hate
I didn't
Israel.
say Islamic bomb.
Okay,
I said
well-
12 are clerical Shia Islam.
Right,
Very
okay, Shia Islam,
specifically.
they want to, yeah. So the Shia Islamists don't get a nuclear weapon because they will use it against Israel because they don't like Israel. Guess which other country, viewers?
Not just Israel.
Okay, not just Israel. Maybe even India or whatever else, yeah? Or even America. Guess which other country, viewers, also doesn't like Israel, has deep anti-Semitism, has a nuclear weapon, is an Islamist hardline state.
But they have it.
And what is it, viewers? It's Pakistan.
But they have it, right? They already have it.
So
That's the problem, you see. If they didn't have it, we'd be happy to have stopped them
So
as
the
well.
Americans.
Unfortunately,
So are
they
you
have
telling
it.
me? Are you telling me, sir, that the Americans don't have the ability to defang a nuclear state like Pakistan,
Oh no,
which
they're
is a
proxy
facsimile?
state. They're one of the biggest recipients of U.S. aid.
Okay.
We fund so much of Pakistan and what they do. You know
Yeah,
that.
well-
I know that. Everybody on the panel knows
So,
that.
so you fund
We
a
play
country.
all of you like
Look at
this.
the hypocrisy,
It's a
viewers. They
game.
fund a country
Rahul,
to
allow me.
hate Israel, to create proxies to bleed other countries and their citizens in the name of religion, in the name of Islam, and they bomb another country because it does pretty much
Well-
the same thing.
Well, no, that country chants death to America and has rallies talking about
should I
wiping
should I
Israel
pull
off
out
the stage
should
of
I
the
pull
map.
out should I pull
Pakistan
out
just
the
does
no,
that
hang on.
quietly behind
should I
closed
should I
doors.
should I pull out the bites of a former prime minister of America who is right now in jail and has been pulled out? His name is Imran Khan, who said that America is a Satan, a satanic power. This is a man who had the executive of Pakistan.
And then the army took him and put him in a prison cell. And we control the Pakistani army and great deal with funding. So look how well that worked out for Imran Khan. Genius.
Okay. Dr. Ranganathan, yes.
Hi, good evening, Rahul, and good evening to my fellow panelists, all of whom are experts. So I'm a layman out here willing to learn. But I mean, as far as the arguments of my the previous panelist, Erol, goes, Iran is being attacked because it has a nuclear weapon, and America dare not attack Pakistan because it has a nuclear weapon. No, look, all these arguments aside, there is a moral argument for attacking Iran. I get that. Notwithstanding the hypocrisy of dozens of dictators having tyrannical regimes and some of them having nuclear weapons, there is hypocrisy there of selectively targeting some. Fine. But the fact of the matter is, as Greg mentioned, and I don't want to go so much as what Sushant Paji talked about the war, but the repercussions of it, because to a layman, I think that's more important, not just the war. So when Greg said, look, all these issues are temporary, all the cost that the world is going to pay. Well, my dear friend, even COVID was temporary. None of us are wearing masks right now. But there, if you remember, you had the demand shock where you had the oil prices going negative. And out here you have the supply shock. Both of them would result in the same thing. Now, when I said there's a moral argument, what did I mean by that? Yes, it is Israel's war. Increasingly, a lot of Americans are saying, yes, it is not American war, it is Israel's war. But wait, what the world is saying? The world is increasingly starting to say it is Israel's and America's war, not our war. Now, how is it different? And in fact, David himself answered it first time round. He said, this is the first time in decades where the US has gone alone without taking even the sanction of the Congress going for a war. Now, how was different from the Gulf War of 1990? Because the world decided to act. The world had a stake. Now, out here, the world is at the mercy of whatever America and Israel might do. So the first thing the world is asking, if you weren't involving us, you were going at it alone. And yes, there is a moral argument, that's your war. Couldn't you have secured the Strait of Hormuz? So at least there was something in it for us. Now, already a week gone, the world economy has suffered a loss of $27 billion already. Had you secured Hormuz, we would have felt a little bit more calmer. Our losses would have been cushioned a bit more. At least the supply lines would have been, made constant, and you could have gone ahead and taken as much time as you want. Now the problem is, you haven't secured Hormuz. The world is at your mercy at the timeline that is dictated by you. It's going to end up roughly the same way, but exactly opposite extreme of what COVID did to the world. And that is the problem that the world and the laymen like us feel.
And let me tell you, viewers, the US taxpayer has already paid $3.71 billion over the last 7 days for this war. That's the price that the US taxpayer is paying. Sushant Sareen, you wanted to come in before I bring back Goldwyn and the others.
I just wanted to clarify on a couple of things. There was there's a Hollywood film called The Peacemaker, in which there is this Pakistani nuclear scientist. And when George Clooney finally gets rid of him, he says, he finds out that the nuclear scientist had been educated in Harvard University. And then there's this famous quote that half the world's terrorists have been educated in American universities. This is the impression now I've got listening to this gentleman who's speaking before Anand, and the kind of logic he's giving to us about Pakistan. Little realizing, see, this is also, they exude their ignorance about how much they control the Pakistanis, what the Pakistanis stand for, what the Pakistanis say. He says that Imran Khan has been deposed by the Pakistani army, and the army guy is a very nice guy, but he is a bigger Islamist than what Khamenei was. Number one. Number two, he was a man who was not only threatening to use nukes against India last year, which apparently spooked Donald Trump. It didn't spook us because we would have bloody sent those buggers into smithereens, to hell in any case. But the fact of the matter is that they constantly, their strategists, their generals, constantly talk about using their nuclear weapons against Israel. But because they have nuclear weapons, the Americans do not have the guts to go after them. So what do? They give them more money, which is the revenue model for Pakistan. And these guys are telling us that they have a strategy. God bless them and good luck to them, yeah? If they have a strategy.
I just want to point out, and I'll bring in David Goldwyn. I just want to point out, viewers, that China actually owns a port at the mouth of that strait today, which is so hotly contested. It's called the Gwadar Fort. It's the Gwadar Port, viewers, the Gwadar Port. It's just a few kilometers away from Chabahar Port. China owns more than half of Pakistan, viewers. And the Americans are kidding themselves and saying, oh, the Pakistanis are in our pocket. It's a bit bizarre. Mr. Goldwyn, I just have to ask you this. Look, I'm trying to understand what really is the mission here. Is it regime change? Because when you ask Trump that, he said it's not. The next day he says, no, I'm sending in ground troops because, we're going to soften them up. Then he says it was just to get rid of the clergy, the 12 Shia, whatevers. And then he goes on to say that, look, no, it wasn't all about that. It was about defanging them so that they couldn't make a nuclear weapon. What is it exactly?
Well, I'm afraid it's a bit of a waste of time to try and detect or infer that there is a grand strategy which is being hidden only to be released down the road. This is a president who ran against endless Middle East wars. He ran against regime change. When he went into Venezuela, it was about drugs until the morning he captured Maduro, and then it was about right. It's going to be about democracy, but it ends up to be about money. It ends up to be about transactions. So I don't think there is a grand strategy here. I think the president is acting impulsively. I think they believed, after saying they had destroyed the Iranian nuclear program, that they were going to be able to intimidate Iran into conceding the way Venezuela did. And the reality is that Iran is a very different country. The IRGC is much more entrenched. Right. The civilian and even the Ayatollahs have less power over the run of that country than the IRGC does. And there is no opposition to turn it over to. So I think the president, I don't take the president at his word when he talks about unconditional surrender
Right.
or regime change. I think he will take an off ramp when it becomes clear that the current strategy is going to destroy his ability to distract from the Epstein files and is going to destroy the ability of his party to run in the midterm.
Well,
So I
you
don't
know,
think
there are
we know
different-
what that's going to be. I
Okay,
think it's
there are-
not
there
going
are-
to be a regime change.
There are different views, viewers, because no one knows exactly what the original mission was.